The first time the alien child tried to breathe our air, he screamed without sound, his thin chest folding like paper, and I knew the stories were wrong. Space was not kind. First contact was not gentle. And humans were not supposed to survive places like this, let alone bring someone else back alive. I remember standing in the rain of ash on that dead moon, my visor cracked, lungs burning, holding a boy who was never meant to live on a death world like ours, and thinking that if I let go for even a second, the universe would take him. They call worlds like Earth a nightmare in alien charts. High gravity, violent weather, unstable tectonics. Predators that hunt for sport, microbes that kill without warning. To most species, our home is listed with a red mark and a warning symbol. Death world. To us, it is just home. We grow up learning how to endure pain, how to adapt, how to survive things that should kill us. That toughness is quiet, learned early, and rarely celebrated until someone from the stars sees it with their own eyes. The boy came from a drifting habitat shattered during a border collapse no one wanted to claim. His people were not warriors. They were scholars and diplomats, soft-bodied, low-gravity born. Their ships avoided conflict, their laws avoided risk. When the habitat failed, escape pods scattered like sparks into the dark. Most never sent a signal, one did. It landed on a moon with storms strong enough to peel metal and nights cold enough to freeze fuel lines solid. A place humans labeled barely survivable. A place aliens would never choose. I was part of a salvage and rescue crew, the kind sent where insurance companies refused to go. We were trained for vacuum exposure, radiation burns, hostile terrain. We were trained because humans expect things to go wrong. When we cracked open the pod, we expected bodies. Instead, we found one living thing curled in the corner, skin pale as frost, eyes too large for his skull. A child, an alien child shaking in terror, lungs failing, heart racing itself toward death. He could not stand our gravity. He could not process our air mix. His muscles were weak, his bones fragile. By every medical rule, he should have died within minutes. I took off my own oxygen mask and forced it over his face, knowing full well it might kill me instead. That is the part aliens never understand. Humans will gamble their own survival without thinking if it means someone else might live. We carried him through storms that knocked us flat. We rationed heat packs. We fought off native life that reacted to movement with teeth and venom. The boy watched it all with wide eyes, seeing humans bleed, curse, laugh, and keep moving. From his perspective, we were monsters. Heavy, loud, unbreakable. From ours, we were just doing the job. Every step back to the ship felt like dragging the moon behind us. My legs shook. My vision narrowed. The boy clutched my suit with hands so light I barely felt them. He made a sound then. Not a scream, but something like awe. Later, translators would say it meant protector, or impossible thing. On the return jump, his condition worsened. Our medbay was built for humans. The machines did not know his biology. I sat with him for hours, keeping my helmet sealed, sharing filtered air, monitoring his breathing by hand. He studied my face through the visor, tracing scars with his eyes. Humans scar easily, heal wrong. Our bodies remember damage and carry it forward. To aliens, that looks horrifying. To us, it is proof we lived. When we reached human space, the questions started. Who authorized the rescue? Why bring him back? What risk did he pose? Deathworld species are feared for a reason. Our immune systems are aggressive, our instincts are violent, our history is filled with wars we survived by becoming harder than the threat. Some wanted him transferred immediately, some wanted him studied, some wanted him sent back to whatever remained of his people. None of them had carried him through a storm that kills steel. The boy did not want to leave my side. He reacted badly to strangers, worse to sterile rooms and soft voices. He calmed when he heard boots on metal, when he felt gravity pull him down. He slept when I was nearby. Doctors said it was imprinting. I said it was trust. In HFY circles, this is the part people cheer about. Humans pack bond with anything. That is not a joke. It is a survival trait. Word spread fast. Alien child surviving on a human ship, thriving even, once we adjusted the environment. As people sent observers, they watched us train, watched us eat food too dense, too spicy, too dangerous by their standards. They watched us joke about injuries that would cripple them. Their reports changed tone over time. Fear shifted into something else. Respect, maybe. Owl. Or alarm. The invitation came without warning. Formal summons from a royal court older than our species. The queen herself requested my presence, and the child was to come with me. I wore a dress uniform that still smelled faintly of oil. He wore a gravity harness scaled to his small frame. As we entered the hall, I felt every eye on us. Aliens tall and thin, floating or gliding, whispering at the sight of a human walking easily under weight that would crush them. The queen was not what I expected. Smaller, fragile-looking. Her crown was light, symbolic. Her power was not physical. It was cultural. She spoke of the rescue, of the reports of the child who lived because a human refused to let him die. She spoke of death worlds and the myths around them. Then she stepped down from her dais and placed something in my hands. It was an honor no human had ever received from her people, an award given only to those who change how the galaxy sees itself. My breath caught, not because of pride, but because I realized what it meant. This was not about me. It was about what humans represent: endurance, adaptation, the will to survive, and to help others survive alongside us. The boy looked up at me then, eyes bright, steady, no fear, only trust. The court saw it too. A death worlder and a fragile alien child standing together, alive, against every expectation written in the stars. As the applause faded, alarms began to sound deep within the palace. Security shifted. The queen's eyes hardened. Somewhere beyond the hall, something had gone wrong. Later they would say it was an attack, or a test, or a warning. All I knew in that moment was that I tightened my grip on the boy's harness and felt the familiar calm settle in my chest. Whatever was coming next, it was about to learn why humans survive death worlds and why we do not leave our own behind. The alarms were not sharp or frantic. That was what scared me most. They were low, measured, designed for a species that disliked panic. In a human facility, sirens scream, lights flash. Here the sound rolled through the palace like a slow heartbeat, calm on the surface, hiding urgency underneath. Around us the courtiers froze. Limbs stiffened, color drained from translucent skin. Fear moved through the room like a temperature change. The boy felt it before I did. His grip tightened, small fingers digging into the fabric of my sleeve. His breathing quickened, the harness adjusting automatically to keep his fragile frame stable under gravity. He leaned closer to me, pressing his forehead against my arm in a gesture I had learned meant danger. Trust, fear, and instinct all wrapped into one. I shifted my stance without thinking, placing my body between him and the open hall. Security units flowed in silently, armor smooth and elegant, weapons humming with contained energy. They did not run, they glided. Their eyes flicked to me more than once, measuring mass, muscle, reaction speed. Humans stand out in alien crowds the way predators do in herds. We are dense, heavy, built to push back against a world that pushes first. The queen raised a hand, and the alarms faded. It's not stopped, just lowered, as if someone had put a hand over the sound. She looked at me, then at the child, then back to her guards. There was calculation there, and something else I had not expected. Relief. Whatever the threat was, it had not yet reached us. We were escorted from the hall, through corridors that curved in ways meant to confuse attackers. The walls shimmered with living material that adjusted to touch and heat. To me, it felt wrong, like walking through something alive. To the boy, it felt familiar. His people built soft, responsive spaces because they feared sharp edges and sudden force. Humans prefer hard corners, solid ground, things that do not move unless we make them. As we moved deeper into the palace, the whispers began, not spoken, but transmitted. The boy's translator chimed softly as fragments slipped through, words like breach, signal, unknown origin. His species did not like unknowns. They cataloged everything, measured every risk. Humans grew up with unknowns. We call them life. The queen explained as we walked. Long ago, before humans had reached the stars, her people had faced extinction. It's not from war, but from environment. A slow failure of systems, a gentle slide toward death, they survived by avoiding danger entirely. No harsh worlds, no extreme gravity, no uncontrolled ecosystems. That philosophy had kept them alive for centuries, but it had also made them fragile. dependent, afraid of change. Then humans arrived. From a planet that should not produce spacefaring life. From a death world that crushed the weak and forged the stubborn. At first, her people watched us from a distance, certain we would burn out or turn violent. Instead, we adapted, we negotiated. We survived outbreaks, disasters, wars. We kept coming back from things that should have ended us. That scared them more than open hostility ever could. The current threat, she said, was something old, something that hunted stability. It followed advanced civilizations and fed on predictability. Soft worlds fell first. Controlled societies collapsed quietly. The signs were subtle. Systems misfiring, signals that did not match known patterns. A presence that learned without revealing itself. Her people had detected it approaching their space. Slowly, patiently, they had planned to evacuate, to hide, to run, as they always had. Then the boy survived a death-world moon because a human refused to accept the odds. That changed the equation. I stopped walking. The guards halted instantly, weapons lifting a fraction. The queen turned, surprised. I asked the question that had been building since the alarms first sounded. Why give me an award now? Why involve a human and a child in the middle of a threat like this? She did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at the boy. He looked back without fear, his posture straighter than it had been weeks ago. Gravity had strengthened him. Exposure to danger had not broken him. It had changed him. Because, she said finally, her people needed to understand what humans truly were. Not from reports. Not from simulations. From proximity. From experience. And because the threat had reacted the moment the award was given, as if something out there had noticed, the boy's eyes widened. His species believed attention itself could be dangerous. Predators notice patterns. Humans notice them too, but we also break them. We improvise. We make noise. We adapt under pressure in ways that defy clean logic. That adaptability is what defines us. It is also what attracts danger. We were taken to a secure chamber overlooking the planet's surface. From there, I could see the world spread below. Gentle oceans, smooth continents. Weather systems so stable they looked artificial. No hurricanes, no wildfires, no tectonic scars. A paradise by alien standards, a place humans would call fragile. Sensors lit up across the display. Something was interfering with long-range scans, not blocking them outright, just bending them like heat distortion. The boy leaned forward, fascinated and afraid. He whispered something the translator struggled with, a concept without a direct human equivalent. A watcher that learns by observing survival. I had seen that look before, on battlefields. It's in disaster zones. It's a moment when you realize the enemy is not a storm or a machine, but something that adapts to, something that watches how you endure pain and decides how to hurt you next. The queen asked me what humans would do, not what protocols said, not what committees decided. What we would do when faced with an unknown threat that preys on weakness and patience. I told her the truth. Humans would not run first. We would test it, poke it, expose ourselves just enough to learn its limits. We would use our death world instincts, our tolerance for loss and uncertainty, to draw it out. We would survive long enough to understand it. The room went silent. Her advisors recoiled. To them that sounded like madness. To me it sounded like Tuesday. Outside, a ripple moved across the sky, barely visible. The sensors spiked. The boy gasped, clutching his harness. The queen's eyes fixed on the display. The threat had arrived closer than predicted. It was curious, alert, watching how a death world species stood in the heart of a soft civilization, protecting one of their own. I felt that familiar calm again, the one that comes before things go wrong. I adjusted my stance, grounding myself under gravity that would crush most beings in the room. Whatever this watcher was, it had just learned something important. Humans do not belong on death worlds by accident. We are shaped by them. And now, something in the dark was about to find out what that really means. The watcher did not announce itself. It never did. That was its nature, according to fragments pulled from ancient alien records. It learned by observing patterns of survival, by noting how civilizations responded to stress, danger, and loss. The more predictable a society became, the easier it was to study, and the easier it was to break. Soft worlds fell quietly. Systems failed one by one. Panic came too late. The palace sensors kept struggling, numbers fluctuating without reason. Alien technicians hovered around their consoles, hands trembling as displays refused to settle into known logic. To them, the environment itself was turning hostile, not through storms or quakes, but through uncertainty. For a species built on stability, that was worse than open violence. The boy watched it all with growing awareness. He was changing. His posture had shifted since the moon, since the ship, since weeks under human gravity. His muscles were still weak by our standards, but his eyes no longer darted constantly. He studied instead, learned. His people noticed, and it unsettled them. One of the observers requested permission to speak with me alone. He was tall and narrow, his movements cautious as if gravity itself offended him. In a private chamber, he asked the question they had all been thinking. Was this what humans did to other species? Expose them to danger until they hardened or broke? I told him no. This was what the universe did. Humans just refused to look away from it. We adapted because we had to. We did not grow strong by choice, but by necessity. Worlds do not care about intent. He did not like that answer. Reports began coming in from the outer platforms. Minor malfunctions at first. Power fluctuations. Communication delays measured in fractions of seconds. To a human crew, that would barely register. To this civilization, it was a warning siren. Their entire infrastructure was built on perfect timing. Any deviation felt like decay. The Queen ordered limited evacuations of non-essential districts. The word evacuation alone sent ripples of fear through the population. Movement meant risk. Change meant exposure. Yet staying still had once doomed them long ago. The contradiction paralyzed them. I was asked to advise. Not command, but advise. Humans were still outsiders here. Tolerated, respected, feared, suggested decentralization. Manual backups. Redundancy. That did not rely on perfect coordination. Physical patrols instead of pure automation. Simple, ugly solutions that worked even when systems failed. The advisors exchanged looks of discomfort. Those methods were inefficient. Crude, wasteful, but they worked on Earth. They worked in storms, wars, blackouts, and disasters. They worked because humans expected failure and planned for it. Some listened, others quietly resisted. Watcher adjusted. On the surface, alien weather stations began reporting anomalies. Winds where none should exist. Temperature shifts too small to matter individually, but widespread enough to alter patterns. The world was stable, but something was nudging it, testing responses. I felt a chill despite the controlled climate. The boy asked me a question then, his voice soft through the translator. He wanted to know if humans were afraid of breaking. I thought about it. About bones that heal crooked. About cities rebuilt after burning. About people who keep going, even when something inside them never fully recovers. I told him we were afraid all the time. We just learned to move anyway. That answer seemed to settle something in him. Alien observers began to gather data on human physiology in higher detail. Heart rates under stress, recovery times, pain tolerance, immune responses. The numbers disturbed them. Humans endured conditions that would cause irreversible trauma to most species and kept functioning. It's not without cost, but without stopping. Some observers whispered the word predator. Others used the word shield. Misunderstandings grew. A minor incident nearly escalated when a human technician forcibly opened a sealed corridor during a power dip. To him, it was a safety check. To the aliens, it was a breach of sacred protocol. Security swarmed. Weapons powered up. For a moment, it felt like first contact all over again, balanced on fear. The boy stepped between them. He raised his hands the way he had seen humans do, open palms non-threatening. His small body shook under gravity and stress, but he stood. He spoke, his voice amplified through the hall. He explained that humans did not wait for permission when lives might be at risk, that they assumed responsibility first and consequences later, that this was not dominance, but habit. The standoff eased, barely. The watcher noticed that too. From its perspective, patterns were shifting. Humans disrupted predictability simply by existing. Their responses to stress were messy, non-linear. Where one system failed, another improvised. Where fear should have frozen action, it triggered motion. This was not how soft civilizations behaved. A decision was made to move critical data cores off-world to a more controlled habitat. I argued against it. Predictability again. Centralized movement. A clear signal. The Queen hesitated, torn between tradition and new understanding. In the end, compromise won. Partial transfer. Limited exposure. The transfer convoy never arrived. Sensors lost it mid-transit, swallowed by interference that left no debris, no energy spike, no clear sign of attack. Attic surged. Advisors spoke of withdrawal, of sealing borders, of cutting contact. Old instincts resurfaced. Humans reacted differently. Crews volunteered for search and recovery missions without waiting for orders. Ships launched into unstable space, pushing drives beyond safe limits. Risk accepted as the price of information. The boy insisted on coming, and for the first time, the Queen did not immediately refuse. She watched him struggle into a reinforced harness, watched him endure discomfort without complaint. She saw the future her people might face if they survived this. Harder, changed, less safe, but more resilient. The search teams found nothing at first, just distortion, gravity behaving badly, space itself feeling wrong. Human pilots described it like flying through a storm you could not see. Instruments lied. Instincts mattered more. One ship barely made it back, hull scarred by forces no one could fully explain. The crew spoke of pressure without contact, of something pressing against reality itself, testing limits. The watcher was no longer content to observe from a distance. It was learning faster. In a quiet moment aboard the command ship, the boy sat beside me, staring at the stars. He asked what happened when humans faced something they could not adapt to. I did not answer right away, not because I lacked an answer, but because it was a hard one. I told him we changed the environment, or we changed ourselves trying. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we paid terrible costs. We never stopped pushing back. Outside the viewport, space rippled again, closer this time. Alarms began to sound across multiple systems, no longer calm, no longer controlled. The watcher was done waiting. Somewhere in the dark, it was deciding whether humans were prey or a problem. The first came without sound. Space folded inward near the outer platforms, not violently, but with intent. Gravity vectors twisted just enough to shear docking arms and send sensor arrays spinning into darkness. To the aliens, it felt like the universe itself had betrayed them. To the humans watching the readouts, it looked like a familiar kind of disaster, the kind that does not ask permission. Emergency lights washed the command ship in muted color. Crews strapped in, hands moved fast, voices stayed calm. The boy clutched the edge of the console, eyes locked on the display, watching a soft civilization meet a hard truth. Systems were failing, but not all at once. The watcher was probing, pressing where responses were cleanest, most automated, most predictable. Human pilots pushed their ships outward, not retreating but spreading. Decoys launched, manual thrusters fired, coms switched to tight beam, and then to line-of-sight laser. Ugly solutions, old solutions. The kind born on a death world where storms tear towers down and you learn to rebuild with what is left. Alien commanders protested. Spreading forces violated every doctrine they had. Concentration meant safety. Control meant survival. I told them concentration made patterns, and patterns were food. The Queen listened. This time, she gave the order to follow human advice. The watcher reacted immediately. Pressure rolled through space again, stronger now. A research platform vanished, not exploding, not breaking, just gone, as if reality had decided it was optional. Fear surged across alien channels. Some froze, some pleaded for withdrawal. The word extinction began to surface, whispered like a curse. Humans did not whisper it. We planned around it. A forward scout ship reported contact of a kind. It's not visual, not tactile, resistance to motion, like pushing against thick water made of nothing. The pilot's voice shook, then steadied. He described the sensation of being measured, tested. He adjusted thrust manually, cycling patterns at random, introducing noise. The resistance fluctuated, confused. The Watcher was learning, but it had limits. The boy asked to speak to the queen. When she arrived, he did not bow the way his people did. He stood, feet planted wide to keep balance under gravity. He told her that humans survive because their world never lets them be the same twice. Seasons change, weather turns, predators adapt, disease mutates. Humans respond by being inconsistent on purpose. We break habits, we improvise, accept scars as information. The queen looked at the human crews moving with controlled chaos, at the aliens struggling to adapt to it, and something shifted in her expression. She ordered her fleets to adopt human command structures temporarily. Decentralized authority, local decisions, permission to fail forward. Watcher pressed harder. Sections of the planet's weather systems destabilized. Gentle winds became violent. Seas that had never known storms began to rise. The world itself was becoming hostile, nudged out of balance. A death world in the making. Alien cities panicked. Evacuation routes clogged. Automated traffic failed when timing slipped. Humans landed anyway. Dropships punched through unstable atmosphere, hulls screaming. Human boots hit ground in cities that had never seen mud. Crews cut manual paths through crowds, lifting aliens to light to walk against wind. Human medics worked without perfect data, without ideal conditions, stabilizing fragile bodies with hands and instinct. Alien observers watched in disbelief as humans thrived in worsening conditions, bruised, bleeding, laughing through pain, adapting routes on the fly, turning chaos into motion. The Watcher watched all of it. It shifted tactics. Power grids across the system went dark simultaneously. The kind of synchronized failure that ended civilizations. Human ships flicked to backup generators and then to none at all, running dark and quiet. Old naval habits resurfaced, silent running. Visual signals, hand signs in cramped corridors. Alien ships drifted, blind and afraid. A human engineer floated through a powerless alien cruiser, showing the crew how to reroute life support manually, how to feel vibration through hull plating to judge engine health. The aliens stared as if watching a myth walk. They had never needed such skills. Their systems had always worked. The boy stood beside me on the command deck as space buckled again. This time, something became visible. Not a shape, not an object, but a distortion where stars bent away. A presence. The Watcher no longer hiding completely. It had grown curious enough to risk being seen. Fear rippled through alien channels. Some called it a god, some a demon. Humans called it a problem. We did not attack it directly. We could not. Instead, human ships began doing something that made no sense to the observers. They flew into unstable regions on purpose. Through gravity shear, through sensor noise, through the worst distortions. They survived not by avoiding danger, but by riding it. The Watcher hesitated. For the first time, it encountered prey that did not seek safety, that used danger as cover, that grew harder to predict under stress. Each loss made the humans less uniform, not more. Each success taught them something new. This was not a soft civilization collapsing quietly. This was a death world species growing sharper. The queen ordered her people to shelter behind human formations. It was an unthinkable reversal, fragile hiding behind the dangerous, the ancient trusting the newcomers. She watched humans burn fuel reserves recklessly to draw the Watcher's attention, watched them take hits meant for softer ships. She understood then why the award had mattered. It was not ceremony, it was recognition. On the surface, storms raged. Human rescue teams worked by touch when sensors failed. They tied themselves together to keep from being torn away. They carried alien children who had never felt rain on their skin. The children cried, then stared in wonder as humans laughed in the downpour, teeth bared alive. The Watcher pressed closer to the planet, curious, hungry. His presence warped tides. Mountains groaned. A world that had never tested its people now did so all at once. Humans dug in. They built barriers from debris. They anchored structures with brute force. They rerouted rivers. They treated the planet like Earth on its worst day, not as an enemy to flee, but as a challenge to endure. The boy stood in the rain beside me, harness soaked, trembling but upright. He looked at the humans around him, scarred and stubborn, and then up at the distorted sky. He understood something his people were only beginning to grasp. Deathworlders are not defined by violence. We are defined by refusal. Refusal to lie down. Refusal to accept the end as written. In orbit, the Watcher recoiled slightly, its patterns breaking as human unpredictability spread through the system. It had found a civilization that did not collapse into simplicity under threat, but exploded into complexity. Alarms still sounded. Ships still vanished. The danger was not over, not even close. But as alien observers transmitted their reports, the language changed. Words like monster faded. Words like shield and storm and necessary appeared. The Queen watched the system burn and hold at the same time. She felt fear, yes, but also something new. Hope, sharp and frightening. The Watcher was learning the truth, too. This was not a soft world anymore. Not with humans here. And whatever came next would not be easy. But for the first time, the galaxy understood why Deathworld species survive. The climax was coming. The universe was about to see what happens when a predator chooses the wrong prey. The Watcher made its final mistake when it tried to simplify us. It pushed harder than before, collapsing space in broad strokes, forcing conditions toward extremes that had broken other civilizations. Gravity surged. Radiation spiked. Weather systems on the planet below crossed thresholds no simulation had ever modeled. To the alien advisors, it looked like the end. To humans, it looked like history repeating itself in a new place. Human ships stopped running clean formations entirely. They scattered into controlled disorder, each crew operating on local judgment. Sharing fragments of data instead of complete plans, information flowed like instinct, not doctrine. The Watcher strained to track it all, to reduce it into something predictable, and failed. On the ground, humans adapted faster than the environment changed. When winds tore through cities, they anchored lines and turned buildings into shelters. When seas rose, they built barriers from wreckage and diverted floodwaters by hand. They used bodies, tools, and stubborn will where machines failed. Alien citizens watched humans bleed, rest briefly, then stand back up. That image spread faster than any signal. The Queen remained in orbit, refusing evacuation. She wanted to see the end with her own eyes. She watched human crews pull alien families from collapsing structures. She watched human pilots deliberately draw the Watcher's pressure away from populated zones. Burning out engines and gliding blind through warped space, losses came, but panic did not rule them. The boy stayed with me through it all. He shook under the strain, but he did not hide. His people had taught him to avoid danger. Humans had taught him something else. That fear could exist alongside action. That survival was not the absence of pain, but the decision to move despite it. The Watcher finally revealed itself fully, not as a shape, but as a network of forces collapsing into a visible distortion. It had grown frustrated, confused. It had learned how soft civilizations failed, but not how Deathworlders endured. It tried one last tactic: isolation. Space around the system began sealing off, cutting connections, trapping ships, and worlds together. The Queen's advisors cried out. Isolation had killed them once before, slowly, quietly. Humans reacted immediately. They stopped trying to break the seal and instead filled it. Ships ran along the boundaries, seeding it with noise, heat, gravity pulses, chaotic data. On the planet, humans ignited controlled fires, built kinetic generators, created storms of motion and signal. They turned the entire system into something loud and messy and alive. The Watcher recoiled. It could not feed on unpredictability. It could not compress a civilization that refused to settle into a single pattern. Every attempt to impose order created more variation. Every push produced resistance in ways it could not model. For the first time, the Watcher was not observing. It was reacting. That was when the Queen understood. The Watcher did not need to be destroyed. It needed to be denied the conditions it required to function. She gave the order that ended centuries of fear. Her people would not flee. They would not hide. They would change. Alien fleets dropped their perfect formations and followed human leads. Automation was overridden. Citizens were taught basic survival skills instead of pure reliance on systems. Cities began restructuring on the fly, adding redundancy, embracing controlled inefficiency. It was terrifying. It was liberating. The Watcher began to thin, its presence diffusing as the system refused to stabilize. It pulled back, not defeated but starved. It would not linger where nothing behaved the same twice. When it finally withdrew beyond detection, the silence that followed was heavier than any alarm. No one cheered at first. Humans slumped where they stood. Alien citizens trembled in relief. Ships drifted, damaged but intact. The system was scarred, but alive. The Queen descended to the surface for the first time in her reign. She walked under open sky, feeling unstable wind against her skin. She watched humans reinforce structures with bare hands and simple tools. She watched alien children help, clumsy but determined. She saw her world changing and realized it would never be the same. She spoke publicly then, not as a ruler, but as a survivor. She declared that Deathworld species were no longer to be feared by default. They were to be understood as what they were. Adaptation made flesh, resilience given form, necessary in a universe that did not care about comfort. The boy stood beside her, translator humming softly. When she finished, he spoke too. He told his people that humans did not bring danger with them. They brought preparedness. That they did not worship chaos, but accepted it. That living on a death world taught a simple truth. Survival is an active process. In the weeks that followed, recovery began. Alien infrastructure was rebuilt with human influence. Manual overrides. Physical redundancies. Training that assumed failure would happen. Human engineers worked alongside alien planners, arguing, laughing, learning from each other. Culture shifted. Human losses were honored openly. Names carved into materials that would weather. The Queen attended every memorial she could, standing under gravity that strained her frame, refusing assistance. She wanted to feel what it cost. As for the boy, he chose to stay with humans longer, not because he rejected his people, but because he wanted to understand what he had survived. He trained under lighter gravity at first, then heavier. He learned how humans prepared for storms, how they healed wrong and moved anyway, how they turned fear into fuel. When it was time for him to return to his people, he did so by choice, not rescue. He carried with him something no data packet could convey. Perspective. I was summoned again before the Queen. There was no ceremony this time. There was no crowd. She thanked me simply. Then she asked a question that mattered more than any award. Would humans stand with them if the Watcher returned? I told her the truth. Humans would not promise safety. We would promise effort. We would stand, adapt, and endure, because that was what our world had taught us. She accepted that answer without hesitation. As I left the system, I looked back at a world that had nearly broken and instead changed. A soft world, learning hardness. A fragile civilization, choosing resilience. Humans had not saved it by force. We had saved it by example. In the end, that was the true HFY moment. Not dominance. Not conquest. But the realization spreading through the galaxy that Deathworlders survive, not because we are cruel, but because we are willing to suffer, learn, and keep going. The universe is not gentle. It never has been. But now, when other civilizations look into the dark and feel something watching, they will remember this. Somewhere out there is a species born on a world that tried to kill it every day and failed.